So you're ready to start a business and you want to really get in there and make something happen. But there's something you should probably do first. We're going to talk about that here today. But before we begin, if you're interested in branding in the creative industry, then you've come to the right place. So hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out. And hey, I'd appreciate a like if you enjoy the content of today's show and got some value out of it. I am Steve Reed, and this is Brand or Die. So we're going to test our riskiest assumption. What does that mean? Well, a lot of us entrepreneurs, we get out there, and I've done this a million times. I know a lot of other people have too, but we get this idea. We want to build something. We're so excited about it. We get crazy and crazy. This is Sparta, right? But then it turns out that our beautiful idea falls flat on its face. It fails. We're sad and we're like, what the heck happened? I thought this was a brilliant idea. What went wrong? And there's an interesting stat. So 42% of startups actually fail because there's a lack of product market fit. There's a lot of other reasons startups fail, but this is one of the biggest ones, right? So unless you're Kevin Costner and you have a cornfield, it's probably not going to be a good idea to do if they build it, they will come type strategy. So the first question we want to ask ourselves is, have we found a problem worth solving? No, there's a lot of bias that is going to be screaming down your neck saying, absolutely, of course you have. All those little things in your mind where we prop ourselves up and convince ourselves of things. But let's not deceive ourselves, because it's very important to go off of data instead of just assumptions and guesswork. So what we're going to do is we are going to implement something called a RAT. No, not that kind of rat, this kind of rat. It stands for Riskiest Assumption Test. This is a methodology, very, very simple. It's really easy to understand, for how to test an idea to see if it's going to be viable or not. And so there's a really great quote here. It's from Richard Feynman. He's an American theoretical physicist. He says, it doesn't matter how beautiful your theory is. It doesn't matter how smart you are. If it doesn't agree with the experiment, it's wrong. And I know that's brutal and it's harsh, but it's true. And we have to be willing to accept the idea that if it doesn't even pass the smell test, the rat test, right, then it's very likely it's not going to succeed out there in the world as well. And so would you rather find out if it's a failure before you spend all the time, the money, the energy, and the effort, or after you've spent all the time, the money, and energy and effort? Because if you found it out here, you could have potentially tweaked things, changed course, found a better market, and been off to the races from there. So how does this work? How does this work? An effective riskiest assumption test has 4 elements to it. You got your hypothesis, your riskiest assumptions, because there could be more than one. You want to list them all out, right? You don't just want to have, maybe you just have one assumption. That could be fine, but there could be more than that. Maybe if you have too many, you need to sit back and rethink things a little more. Like, whoa, I'm making a lot of assumptions here. Can I validate all of these, right? So then you have your methods. What methods are you going to use to test those assumptions? And then your minimum criterion for success. Okay, so if I'm going to succeed with this, what's the bare minimum that I want to achieve? Is it 50 signups? Is it 50 reviews? Is it 50 pre-purchases or something like that? So it can also look like this. Here's another way of looking at it. We are assuming that what? This is how you test a single assumption. We are assuming that what? To verify that, we will what? What will you do? And measure what? What things are you going to measure that are going to tell you whether or not this works? And our assumption is right if what happens, right? So if XYZ happens, then we know we're right. So we want to figure these things out beforehand. And you can take this little formula here, write it down, and use it for all your riskiest assumption testing. It's very, very simple. Several years ago, my daughter and a couple of her friends, they were very interested in starting this kind of babysitting service. And they're like, we're doing this, we're doing it. We're going to make a ton of money. We're going to do princess parties, and people are going to pay us a lot of money to come to their house. and dress up as princesses and do games with their kids and everything, right? So I said, okay, well, before we go and do that, let's ask a couple of questions. Let's look at some of your assumptions here. What assumptions are you making? Well, you're making an assumption that parents will want to pay you a certain amount of money to do a princess party for their child, right? So how do we validate that? How many parties per year would people be willing to pay for their child? We didn't know the answer to that question. We said, how many of these parties do you think a family will want to do per year? Just one for a birthday, or many of them, or one a week? Do we even know? No, we don't. Okay. So I said, all right, what types of games and things are you going to be providing for the kids? And so they started listing out all these ideas. And I was like, have you tried to figure out how much all that's going to cost? Because that's going to eat into your profit. The more things you buy and give to the kids, that's coming out of your profit. Are you going to be able to charge enough to make a good margin on what you're doing? So we went and we started brainstorming all these different things and trying to come up with some tests to do. But even in the process of trying to develop the tests, it became very clear very fast that this probably wasn't going to be a profitable business, because they started asking themselves these other questions. And it's like, okay, well, what if we just babysat? Because parents need that every weekend. And we get paid 40 to 60 bucks every weekend. So we started doing the math, saying, okay, if you babysat every weekend, you would make this much money. If you did a princess party and you charged this much, and this much got eaten out by all of the crafts and everything like that, which is like half, and then they were splitting the profits 3 ways. I'm like, and how many princess parties are you going to be doing? They began to realize very quick that this would not be a profitable business idea, and they just stuck to the babysitting. But you can imagine what would have happened if they would have proceeded forward and spent all that time and all that money. And so to this day, I wonder, what was the better lesson? Should I have taught them that, or should I have let them fail first and then taught them after? I don't know. But I do know that it's a good idea if you are going to try to run a serious business and do something effective and go out there and win. Then it's really important to test your assumptions first and to just simply run a basic test. Find some ways that you can actually test those assumptions so you can get out there and get some data and at least have some benchmarks for success to know if you can be successful with it or not. And there are many, many ways to do this. Like I can't possibly consider every single industry and every single business idea and everything here in this one little show. This is just meant to give you the seed of the idea so you could go out there, go ahead and do some searches for riskiest assumption tests. You're going to find a ton of really great information out there. You could also talk to a business consultant or someone like that who can give you some advice on how you can best determine that product market fit. So hey, I hope you got something useful out of today's show. If you did, go ahead and hit that like button if you're a fan of Kevin Costner, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on this type of content if you enjoy it. And hey, we'll see you next time on Brand or Die.